Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. I'm wearing a Pro Staff t-shirt, but I'm talking about the blades, the new Blade 98. I'm dealing with both string patterns in this review, the 1619 and the 1820. This is version 8, the 8th generation of the Wilson blade. So what is this update about? One key thing is the design. It looks very sweet, color shifter with a green, kind of green purplish style, really shines in the sunshine. It's not the first paint with this kind of style. There's also an Engel custom racket that came out called Octane paint. They use this type of paint with a bit more of a purple hue. Wilson took it and made it green, and it looks great on both frames. And but that's not the only update of this frame. They've renamed the Tech Feel Flex to 45. They made the rackets slightly lighter to swing. They are now with a lower swing weight, both of them. I think that's generally a positive thing, but some players might find that you lack a bit of plow through in these new versions. They're also perhaps slightly stiffer. Not much of a difference. If you look at the RA stiffness rating, it's nothing, but when you play with them, you feel that it's perhaps slightly stiffer. I've strung them up, both of them in the same setup, so I could compare. It's all power in the mains, 125 gauge, and Luxon element in the crosses. It's a popular string hybrid on the tour. Monfils uses it. I think also Emma Raducanu uses this string setup, the hybrid of all power for good control, but also the element for a bit softer feel and power, but not all the way to using, for example, natural gut. So interesting setup. Now we're seeing more hybrid setups also with poly. The specs, exclamation mark, are very much on, spot on. So Wilson really nailed this one, or I was very lucky, I don't know, but the specs are very much spot on. You can see them here on the screen. Really happy about that. So who is the blade for? Well, the blade is a versatile frame. It's definitely for more advanced players. You don't get the same kind of power with this 98 square inch dense pattern, pretty low stiffness rating. You're not going to get a lot of pop, a lot of top spin. This is for you who like to kind of massage the ball around the court. You play an all-court game, you have a good level of tennis. Otherwise, you're going to work hard to get good depth on your shots. I sometimes struggle when I'm late with my footwork or not preparing perfectly to get the depth I want on a tennis shot. So for you who are struggling with your technique or footwork, I think these frames might be a bit demanding. Better to go for something more like a tweener frame or with a higher stiffness, a little bit more power on tap. Both string patterns, the 1820 and the 1619, are pretty tight. They're not really open and spin focused, and if you look at the beam design and how it's designed, it's a pretty traditional style frame, not made for aerodynamic windshield wiper technique, more for flat hitters. Tsitsipas, Goffin, they use blades from older generations. Other pros also like Sonego use blades. Hit with a bit of a flatter trajectory, a bit more aggressive minded players, and not so much for the top spin guy who wants to stay behind the baseline and hit with a lot of spin. So the blades are definitely more demanding, a little bit more for advanced players in my opinion. There will be Blade 100 and 104 reviews coming up. Those are a bit more forgiving, a bit more easy to use, a bit more power. But these are pretty low powered, and just want to get that out of the way. The first question I'm going to get is, how does these differ from version 7? Version 7 was a frame I really enjoyed. They had increased the swing weight. The 1820 specifically was a bit too high in my opinion. I had one that was 332. I saw Tennis Warehouse do their average measurement at 334. It's a bit too high for most players. If you're, highly advanced player, going towards pro, the 330 plus is nice, but for most players it will be a bit demanding. The 98 16 19, that was a bit lower, 325-ish, a little bit higher. Still somewhat demanding, but much easier to use. So what they did with this edition is that they made them easier to swing, and according to their marketing, they also made them a little bit more stable. I'm not exactly sure how they did this, if this is the 45 technology or just a little bit of a stiffer layup. I feel like it's a bit stiffer, not so that it's harsh, but it's just a little bit more firm in its approach. So you won't get that ultra plush feel that you might like from version 7. So keep in mind that if you really enjoy the sensation when you're playing with version 7, this is not much different, but it's definitely not better if you like plush feel. It feels a little bit deader, a little bit stiffer. I definitely feel like I need to drop tension with these to open up a little bit more pocketing of the ball, because it doesn't really pocket 100%. But the one great thing about these frames, as with the version 7, is that you are very much connected to the ball. You know where it's going, you have pinpoint precision on flat shots, on drop shots, on volleys and serves. That's where the blade really shines. You get that confidence to swing out, go for your shots, be aggressive, and that thing is very important. It's something I really like, but I do sometimes feel like the blade design and the frame for me is not as whippy and as fast through the air as I would like it. That's my pet peeve. But I have a one-handed backhand. I feel sometimes, while these frames feel like they belong more in the hands of a player with a two-handed backhand, and that's just a feeling. It might not be the same for you, but my feeling around these frames, with the weight, the balance, the beam design, feels like they're made more for like a typical Goffin player who is very much all court, plays, you know, can hit all the shots, don't have huge power, but doesn't really rely on the power, more kind of counter punching. But then you have a player like Tsitsipas, who plays with a kind of Eastern grip, hits one-handed backhand with a bunch of topspin, and he still uses a blade, although an older one, but it's still a blade with different strokes for different folks. That's just my feeling about both of these frames. But the blade is definitely an iconic frame nowadays, and a very good racket for, you know, intermediate to advanced versatile players that want kind of an all-court weapon with confidence and precision. But comparing version 7 and version 8, this is a little bit stiffer, a little bit deader in feel. I think you need to drop tension a bit more. Still good stability, pretty decent, easier to swing for sure. Lower swing weight, relatively easy to swing. Not whippy, not fast, but easier to swing. These both frames had very maneuverable swing weights. The 98 16 19 was a bit too low with the 312 strung. That's a bit too low. I think you need to add some weight to bump it up to get the stability that you want from a frame. The 1820 dropped almost 10 points, around 325 now the swing weight, and it is more maneuverable, more easy to swing. Still, with the design of the beam and everything, it's not just super whippy, but it's relatively easy to swing compared to the predecessor. So if you felt like you really enjoyed the 1820, the tighter pattern, but you felt like it was sluggish, a bit heavy, this one could be interesting. They're not hugely different in feel. I feel like this one is more of a kind of cosmetic update with some slight improvements with how the weight was added. So if you like version 7, I don't think this is a huge improvement. It's a little bit easier to swing, but you do lack a little bit of plow through, and it's not quite as plush, but they're very close. I wouldn't find the need to go and buy a version 8 if you're really happy with your version 7, unless you fall in love with the design of this frame. And I think that is where they're gonna sell the most rackets, is based on the design, because the durability of the paint and the paint design looks great. It's a very nice looking frame. It stands out in the marketplace, and I think that's where the energy of this racket seems to have been laid. They just made some very, very minor tweaks. I feel like the feeling now, being a little bit deader, not as plush, is more kind of a version 5 2015, the green and black, one of my favorites, and between version 7 2019. They're kind of in between there. They're not close to the countervail at all, which is version 6. This is more a hybrid between the plusher version 7 and the kind of deader feeling version 5. Pinpoint precision, very connected to the ball, point and shoot racket, good stability at the net, really nice on serves. I always felt like the blades come through very well on serve with the way they are structured, and the weight and balance works really well on serve. I'm always happy serving and volleying, for example, with the blade line. So these kind of shots, excellent. The slice, the blade cuts through the air like a knife, and the slice is an excellent shot with this one, which is important to me. So that's something I really value, that I can create a penetrating slice and attack with the slice, as I'm not as confident with my one-handed backhand as I am with my forehand. So for me, using the slice is important, and the blade does this well. So the 16-19 is the easier to swing. Quite a bit of a difference in swing weight, 10 points or a bit more, compared to the 18-20, which has more plow through, more stability, more power through the ball. And that's the main difference between these two rackets. There's not a huge difference in string pattern openness. You can compare yourself if you want, but as you can see here, they're all both pretty tight in the center, but this one is a little bit more open, and also if you look towards the edges. So the 16-19 will give you a bit more lift on the ball, and actually now that I'm trying to hit with more topspin, I think I prefer this one, but I would have liked it with a bit more weight, a bit more swing weight. So the 16-19 gives you a little bit more spin, easier to whip the ball, but maybe a little bit of weight at 12 o'clock would make it a bit of a better racket. I would maybe add 2-3 grams up there, which is a typical thing I like to do when the swing weight is as low as it is in this one. The 18-20 is playable in stock form. Pinpoint precision, a bit tougher to get it above the net. You can hit the tape a bit with this if you have a flatter stroke. You know this already with the 18-20 patterns, they're pretty tight. The blade 18-20 is quite tight and controlled. This is a solid update, that's my verdict. It's a solid update, it's nothing fantastic. You don't have to run out and buy these frames. They are excellent rackets for players looking for control, nice slice, good serve, stability. They don't really have huge weaknesses. Topspin generation might be one of them. Players who like to hit massive windshield wiper, heavy swings, fast swings. You're not a blade player. In my opinion, you probably want to go for a Pure Aero VS or an Extreme Tour or something a bit more whippy. These rackets are more for players like to hit through the court, flatter game style, maybe a bit more aggressive, a bit more flat. Should fit me perfectly. But still I feel like these are a bit more demanding. So for my game, I need more help with the spin. I would definitely recommend going for a low tension on the 18-20. The 16-19 was fine, but with the 18-20, I'd go lower to open up a bit more pocketing, a bit more spin, a bit more depth from that frame. The blade is still great. It's still a very good frame for the right player. And it looks better than ever, but I'm not sure if it's playability wise an improvement or a version 7. That was already very good. And so I'm not really quite sure that this improved it. It does give you more room to customize, or an easier swinging experience. So if that's what you're looking for, then version 8 is a good idea to demo or purchase. But if you're really connected to the plush feel of the version 7, I don't think this is an improvement over that one. But it depends on what you like. Easy swing versus a more plow through, more plushness, and that's what you have to ask yourself. So the blades 98, they do exactly what I expect from a blade. It's not a bad update, it's a minor update, but maybe the chameleon paint is where the real beauty of this frame is. So that's my Blade 98 review. I will also review the Blade 104, and if there are upcoming blade models, I'll look into those as well, like for example the Blade 100. Henrik talked about the Blade 100L in his review, so I won't cover that one, I think, but for the Blade 104, that's about to come. I'm about to string that up, see how that plays, a bit more power, a bit more spin, a bit more forgiveness from the 104 square inch head size. So stay tuned, please subscribe to the channel, and I appreciate all of you always. If you want to support Tennisnerd and the work I do, please consider joining Patreon, patreon.com/tennisnerd, or buying something through the links in the description below. And my affiliates there, Tennis Warehouse Group or other affiliates, I get a small commission if you use the link and buy something at no extra cost to you. So big thanks if you do. That's all for this video. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.